cheers to another episode of the Weinnotes podcast. I'm your guide, AJ Weinzettel, on this journey of stories showcasing the people behind the wonderful world of wine, where we dive into conversations ranging from terroir, viticulture, to favorite music, superpowers, and more. Please enjoy this episode of the Weinnotes podcast. Alex, Breauna, thank you so much for taking the time today to join me on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
We're super happy to be here with you, AJ. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Are you getting ready for the holidays? I mean, it's we're a week and a half away?
Yeah, actually, if anything, we have a little bit more breathing room this year. We always bottle in December. Sometimes we're bottling this week in the month. This year we bottled last week, so actually all of our bottling's already in the rearview mirror, and we got a couple extra work days to get everything packaged up, shipped out. We've been hand waxing and labeling large format bottles and getting those packed up for some holiday gifts. So yeah, it's been busy, and we are looking forward to, I think, hibernating a little bit around the holidays.
We bottle our entire vintage over the course of 2 days. So our entire year is wrapped up into these 2 days in December. And it's really the nice little bow on the end of the year before we jump into our holidays with family. So.
Wow, that sounds absolutely amazing. But congratulations in getting everything bottled.
Thank you.
It's always a bit of a relief. And then you start looking at next harvest like day one of next year. So winemaking cyclical, right? We're farmers.
Yeah, there is no downtime whatsoever.
Yeah.
I just want to kind of go back a little bit in July when we first met at IPNC. That was a nice little surprise to run into you and Morgan there. Was that your first IPNC that you have attended?
It was, yeah. IPNC has been on our radar for a long time. It's definitely one of the signature, if not the signature, Pinot Noir centric events in North America. And so we had been pinging them corresponding with them for a couple of years. Obviously, you throw a pandemic in there and event schedules get a little bit thrown for a loop, but we were happy to get the official invite for 2022 and then make our way up there to, meet customers, meet colleagues and peers, learn a lot, share a lot. And it was fun, I think, for us in particular, because at a lot of events we go to, they're very California Pinot Noir centric, or even Sonoma County Pinot Noir centric. So you're with you're with a lot of your kind of immediate peers. Up there, we were a little bit more of unique because it was very Oregon centric, and we were kind of with, I think, a little bit more with some of the international folks being from California, and people were, I think, a little bit more gravitating towards it's I don't taste California Pinot Noir nearly as often as Oregon Pinot Noir. So helped feel a little bit more unique up there, which was fun.
I had FOMO. I was home on mom duty. We have a 1.5-year-old at home. So this was my first year of not doing those events. So it was really nice to have Morgan, Alex's cousin, join along for the event. It sounded like so much fun. So
we had a decent time. We drank some decent wines.
Yeah. I heard it was a little hot though.
It was definitely a little hot. Yes. Were there any standout, activities or anything that stood out for you at IPNC?
Gosh, probably the seminar and the lunch where we met each other, going out to residents and being with a, slightly smaller kind of breakout group, being able to interact with people a little bit more one-on-one. I mean, the whole program, there's plenty of times where you're just in this sea of people, at the big dinners or the breakfast and stuff like that. So, having it be a little bit more of a smaller, more curated group was really fun. But honestly, I'm the winemaker, Bree's the wine seller. It says it on the back of our bottle. So I'm always really happy and in my element, just discussing kind of winemaking and I guess what I would call the cork dork topics. And everybody there was super into wine, super technical, super into Pinot Noir, which is, my expertise. So it was just fun to be around a lot of like-minded people and, being able to get into the weeds on some topics.
That's awesome. And to dive a little bit more into your story. So your parents, if I remember correctly, they planted the vineyard in 96. But
yeah, so you want me to just jump in and give kind of the quick synopsis of how we got up to today?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you want to, I'm just there's in diving into your story. I'm always kind of curious. Are you Are you traumatized by raspberries? Are you able to eat raspberries to this day?
I appreciate, speaking of getting in the weeds, I appreciate that AJ has read our website.
Oh, yeah.
We work really hard on being like super clean and user-friendly and appealing, like at a glance. But then if you want to dig into our website, there's a lot to dig into.
We sort of pride ourselves on being extremely transparent. I mean, if you look at the back of the Pinot Noir bottle, we get down to every nitty-gritty percentage of each of our vineyards that goes into our Russian River Valley blend. So,
right.
There's
a little obsessive compulsive disorder is helpful.
We're pretty detailed.
It's not a bad thing.
We're pretty detailed. So going back to the, details of how we got our start, my husband here, his parents found this old decrepit apple orchard here in Sebastopol.
So they found the property first. There was nothing here besides these old apple trees that like you couldn't pay somebody to take the apples, let alone sell them. So they built a family house first, and then I guess their first stab at farming was, 2 to 3 acres of raspberries kind of surrounding one of the portions of the property.
Should I get the photo?
Yeah.
Okay, I have a photo of the raspberries.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Old aerial of the property. So I don't know, that was just some harebrained idea of my dad's, and he gave it a whirl. And the way my dad tells that story is, raspberries have a shelf life of about 2 minutes. They take a bunch of water. They take a bunch of care. There's no like market for them. So besides like having some fruit to put on your morning breakfast cereal, which you can do with a couple of plants, not a couple acres of plants, that was a non-starter. So then he went and did a smart thing, which was talk to one of the neighbors. And our neighbor just to the north that we share a property line with is owned by the Kozlowski family. And they are, I think Tyler, who's my age, is 5th generation farmer. So Perry, my dad's cohort, 4th generation Sonoma County farmer. And they grow a little bit of everything. They do a lot of grapes now, a lot of apples in the past. And then they've also had they have a whole specialty foods brand of like pies and jams and salad dressings and marinades and all this stuff. So they know farming kind of front back. This is from
These aren't grapes.
Yeah, it's like,
oh my goodness,
crescent moon of agriculture right there are the raspberry plants.
Oh my goodness.
This is when the house was first built. And
right.
You can see the teeny tiny cypress trees lining the driveway leading up to the house. And then 2 to 3 acres of raspberries.
Oh my goodness.
These are just like blackberry patches and like scrub trees and stuff. And I think AJ has an aerial of the property now.
And then here it is now.
Yeah.
Oh.
15
yeah.
acres of planted Pinot Noir. So this is a fun before and after.
No, that is fun. And to kind of give everybody a reference that's watching on the video, we can see it's a nice little aerial of the property today.
So this is where we're sitting now, in the kitchen overlooking the
small lawn, I guess you would call it.
Yeah, the pool and the fire pit there. So as you can see, the house is fully surrounded by what are now 26-year-old vines. And so this house is really, the heart of the property. And I would say both literally and figuratively.
Yeah. Well, and since, not to get too off topic from kind of the history, I'm sure we'll get back to it, but it's worth mentioning maybe at this point. So this house is now for rent also for vacations. So mostly to our mailing list and wine club members. If we have free weekends, we will put them up on the rental websites. But yeah, we like kind of talking about the house because it's a great way to experience Kanzler, taste with Breauna or with Morgan, and, stay in this property amongst the vines if you're ever out visiting West Sonoma County.
Yeah, it started out as a wine club benefit and it's really kind of exploded. So we hope that...
Folks will look us up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on our website, and there's a link to Airbnb that has a whole boatload of photos and all the amenities listed, like any Airbnb listing.
Yeah, I have to say, I did take a look, and it looks absolutely amazing. I'm like, I gotta go. Yeah, no, it looks great.
Yeah, next time if you're doing a Sonoma County or Sonoma Napa circuit, maybe we can put you up and have some wines to taste and all that.
Yeah, no, well, I'm coming out in January for well, no, I'm not coming. I'm going to I'll see you probably again in January at the Palm Springs Pinot Fest.
Oh, good.
Oh, awesome. Perfect.
That'll be super fun. We're looking forward to that event.
Yeah.
Well, back to a little bit about sort of the house, the vineyard, how we got started as farmers. The raspberries, as Alex mentioned, weren't working out. Perry Kozlowski told Stephen and Linda to plant grapes. Did you tell him his exact?
No, not quite. Yeah, the saying that I always associate with that advice is, Perry, our neighbor, said something to the extent, said to my dad something to the extent of like, you can plant you can grow apples in like 48 states in this country. You can grow premium wine grapes a handful of places in the world. If I were you, I'd plant grapes. And so my dad took that advice. Ironically, now in the long run, Perry kept growing apples for another like 20 years. And 6, 7, 8 years ago, he tore out like 2/3 of his orchard and planted grapes. And he's like, I should have taken my own darn advice when I told you that too 20 years ago.
Well, it's actually really fun because they're 4th, 5th generation farmers next door.
I did mention that. I think Perry's 4 and Tyler's.
Yeah, and now our kids go to daycare together up the road.
Oh my goodness, that's awesome.
2 longtime farming families living right next door, and and now we have kids that are the exact same age. So it's going to be fun to see what this looks like in the next 10 to 15 years.
Oh, I'm sure it's going to be amazing. I'm sure. I'm curious. So your dad worked for Microsoft. Was he just looking for a slower, to slow down in life, and he was just, tired of tech, or like, why did he want to move out into the country and plant raspberries?
I think, so my parents met in the Bay Area. They met living in the East Bay and Berkeley and Oakland. And so they met there, they got married there, and they started there. I was born and my older sister was born in the East Bay. So we were a Northern California family. So the trip up to Microsoft was kind of an opportunity that my dad couldn't pass up. This was like late 80s too. Like, I think my dad was one of the first 1,000 employees at Microsoft. So, it was an established company in a growing, field, but it was not the behemoth that it is today. So I think they always intended to kind of come back down. And I think after 5 years, the weather had gotten to them a little bit, and they were ready for kind of the California lifestyle that they had gotten used to. And I think they kind of went across the Golden Gate Bridge and just started looking and looked at communities in Marin County, looked at southern Sonoma County. I know they took a hard look at Petaluma, and they'd been to Sebastopol, during their time, just jaunting around coastal communities when they lived here, and just kind of fell in love with the area. But it was like a family and community move. They weren't like, both of my parents drank wine and liked wine, but they weren't like, this wasn't a life goal or a dream. We've always wanted to have our own vineyard or winery or anything like that. It was started as a family and community move, and then happened like really organically from there. Like, my dad calls himself an accidental farmer, kind of picking this property and having a good feeling about it, just from a family standpoint. And then, the false start with the raspberries, and then good advice from a neighbor, and then he just started plugging himself into the farming community, taking UC Davis extension courses, taking courses here at Santa Rosa Junior College, which as a solid community college serves the community industry, which to a large extent here is vitinology, so they have a great program over there. And he met the fellow who planted our vineyard, a guy named Eric Neal, who continues to manage the vineyard to this day. So I've known Eric, they started working together in 1995, and Eric and I still work together. I sent Eric an email this morning, so he's still managing the vineyard, and that kind of continuity for farming, I think has been a huge part of our success as well. Just, really having the same, boots in the dirt, the same hands on the vines year in and year out, working towards, bringing in the great crop, the best crop that we can every single year, despite what Mother Nature throws at us.
Yeah, I can imagine. So who yelled at you more when you were 16, Eric or your dad when you wrecked the car in the vineyard?
Oh, definitely my dad. Definitely.
You gotta tell them this story from your standpoint.
Is that on the website, or did I drop that during the seminar?
No, it wasn't during the seminar. I dug a little bit. That's one of the things that I do.
This is good. So the
vineyard was planted in 96, and fast
Right.
forward, we're selling all the fruit to other clients to make Kanzler Vineyard designates. We were not making Kanzler wine yet, just selling all the fruit. So,
I mean, long story short, I turned 16 and
which
I got
was
my
what year?
2002.
2002. Okay.
I turned 16. I got my driver's license on my 16th birthday because, that's what you did. And you're super excited. And I don't know, 5 months late, even less than that, 3 or 4 months later, I crashed my dad's car. And my parents basically told me, like, you're not allowed to drive again. I mean, there was the grounding and all that stuff. That was one thing. But then, like, the medium term sort of punishment or lesson was, well, you're not allowed to drive again until you pay us the insurance deductible for the car, which I think was like $1,500 or $2,000, and I'm 16.
That's a lot for a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think minimum wage at the time in California was like $6.75 an hour. So like takes some time to make that kind of money, but it was going into summer. It was the summer after my sophomore year of high school. So I think that was sort of my calculus was like, I can try to flip burgers for $6.75 an hour or just go find a minimum wage job. But even at that time, the vineyard guys were making between like $8.50 and maybe $10.50 an hour, depending on the work we were doing. So I called Eric and asked for a job. And he gave me one, I think, expecting, a 16-year-old gringo kid to drop out pretty promptly. But I managed to earn my stripes a little bit, and I worked for Eric that whole summer and was able to pay back my parents and then save a little bit of money. I think I bought a car stereo for my Volvo the next year. I downgraded in cars after the accident.
It was a Volvo wagon.
It was a great car.
It was one of those boxy Volvo wagons. We went on a date in that wagon.
That was a great car. But yeah, I worked for Eric, kind of got my start in the vineyard, learned enough Spanish to be dangerous, paid my parents back. And that was sort of my first entree into anything vit and enology. But that was sort of it through the rest of high school and college. I didn't start gravitating to the wine industry at 16. It took a couple of years after that.
Yeah. So you're talking about, some vineyard designate labels for other companies. And I believe one of those other companies was Kosta Browne, right?
Yeah. So they were partners of ours. We were partners of theirs for, 18 or 19 years.
Yeah. They made 17 vintages of a Kanzler vineyard designate.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I'm sure folks listening to this, I'm sure you yourself, AJ, are familiar with sort of their genesis. Really neat story. They were working together in a restaurant. Dan Costa and Michael Brown were somms at a restaurant. They started making their own wine. 1 barrel grew to 4 barrels. There's a lot of history on this. And then my dad met them. It must have been in like 01 or 02, met them through a neighbor of ours who was thinking of investing with them. And we had a little bit of extra fruit for sale. It was like the 4th or 5th year our vineyard was even producing grapes. And so my dad liked them and they kind of hit it off. And so we actually, made some grapes available for them. I even think my dad might have fronted them the grapes, just said, take these and pay me later, because they were a startup winery. And then we ended up investing in the winery as well with this, group of a couple dozen investors. And that was, Kosta Browne, I'm not even going to say 1.0, that was like Kosta Browne beta. And then like their story is, well documented now, massive success, big scores, full mailing list. Their wines were super in demand. They were, I think played a big role in what I consider kind of, a meteoric rise in the early to mid aughts. Some people want to call it the sideways effect, New World, specifically West Coast, California and Oregon Pinot Noir kind of took off like a rocket there. I think Sideways came out in 04.
Yeah. Well, and it was such a symbiotic relationship just because with our, I'm staring at our little wine country mini bar here in the kitchen, and on the cover of Wine Spectator is the Kosta Browne Kanzler Vineyard Designate. That coincided with actually a very important wedding here on the property. If you look, AJ, on your screen, there's like a big grass area next to that red tree on the top right of your screen there. And Alex's sister got married here on the property in 2004. And that was initially when Kosta Browne started getting, interested in the fruit. And also when
they started getting their like 96 and 98 point wines in that era. And that, I don't know how important scores are these days. There's a lot more people scoring wines, but back in the early aughts, like there was kind of I think of like spectator, advocate, and enthusiast. And like, if you got a big score in those magazines as a winery, like it would be reflected in your sales. That was what consumers paid attention to. And it was big. So Koster Browne started getting big scores, and our name was associated with that as a vineyard designate.
And so as a result of that, this wedding wine that Stephen and Greg Stock, who's actually the winemaker at Landmark,
who was one of our early clients also,
made this barrel of wine for the wedding.
Yeah. So the way that story goes is my sister got married in the backyard. She was like in her earlier mid-20s, and so it was kind of a party wedding. Like, it was a pretty young crowd. My brother-in-law is a Scotsman, so there was scotch at the wedding. There were some kegs of beer. I think there were margaritas.
They were all in kilts.
Yeah. And then there was this wine that my dad and Greg had made, which was, the wedding was in 2004, so it was a 2003 vintage of wine, I think mostly made with second crop even. And the way that story goes is we woke up the next morning and like, we drank some of the booze, but there was a bunch of leftover tequila from the margarita bar. We drank some of the beer, but there was plenty left in the kegs, and every single drop of wine was gone. So they were like,
that's awesome.
That went well. The party liked that wine. So between that sort of just like, experience of getting that direct feedback, and then we're selling our grapes to these other wineries, and
people are like, hey, you're selling all this fruit and you're getting giant scores, you guys should be doing this for yourselves.
So that kind of launched, that was the next evolution, is actually keeping some of the fruit from the estate vineyard and making some wine for ourselves. And so we did that in, the wedding was summer 2004 with 2003 vintage second crop, and so that fall, probably 4 months after the wedding, they peeled some rows back to keep for in-house Kanzler production, and that was the first commercial vintage of Kanzler Vineyards was 2004.
And I remember as a freshman in college meeting you, and you were bringing some of those early bottles that your dad and Greg made to like frat prom, like, oh, there's this guy and he's bringing his wine, but we're not
to college parties.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure, you don't really think about bringing wine to college parties. You're like, what?
Kind of gimmicky, but it made me feel cool.
Between that and his eyebrow ring that he had.
Guys. I was hoping we were going to be talking about, like, the Oak program or, like, till or no till in the vineyard, but let's talk about Alex's adolescence.
So I mean, in 2008, you at this time, I think you had like 2 liberal arts degrees, and you did a harvest to kind of kick things off. At what point did the wine bug actually hit you, and you're like, I just want to go back into wine?
Yeah. So I graduated from school. Bree and I met at University of Colorado in Boulder. So I was graduating from Boulder in the spring of 2008. I had double majored in 4 years because I'm really academically minded, but I had 2 liberal arts degrees in 2008 to just a booming economy. Like Lehman crashed like right around when I graduated. I did.
New grads were not getting their doors knocked down for job opportunities.
Yeah, exactly. So I wasn't like ready to just like go try to work for a big company anyway. I was thinking about going into education. I wasn't really ready to do that yet. Well-trodden path for CU graduates is to just go move to the mountains for a year and, be a ski bum. That seemed pretty appealing to me. But I had no free ticket. I was going to be kind of cut off financially after graduation. So I was like, all right, well, what can I do to save money before it starts snowing? And I was like, like grape harvest, like I can get a job in the wine industry, through my family. And even in a down economy, like the grapes don't stop growing. Like everybody's going to have a harvest. They're going to need interns. And so I decided to move home, and I got my first internship was at Landmark in Sonoma Valley. They were a Kanzler fruit client at that time. And at the time, he was their assistant winemaker. Now he's their head winemaker, was making the Kanzler wines anyway. So he was kind enough to take me on as an intern. And honestly, during that first internship, fall 2008, I'd say like a month, 6 weeks into it, I was pretty darn interested. We got through bottling. We had like 2 to 3 weeks of bottling, which is just like, I mean, that's just assembly line work. It gets real old real quick. So after I was like, okay, not all this work is bottling. This is really cool.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we were actually close to the estate here. We had a French intern from Alsace. His girlfriend was out with him, and she was working at Joseph Phelps Freestone. And so this was like maybe midway or towards the end of the vintage. Like the Phelps Freestone crew came to Landmark to taste and hang out and see our operation, and vice versa. And we were standing out, at one of their vineyards, kind of at the very western border of Russian River Valley, ocean one way, greater Russian River the other way, fog kind of blowing around, vines just starting to change color. And I was like, okay, like this is really cool. I want to see more of this.
Right.
So if I had to pinpoint like one moment, it was, a couple months into that first vintage, standing out in a really pretty coastal vineyard. And that took me to New Zealand, and then up to Oregon, and then back down to California to do a little bit more school and try to find a full-time job, which by like early 2011, the economy had bounced back a little bit, and I had, some experience under my belt, and I was actually able to go out and find a real job.
Yeah, and then that's great. And then you end up, kind of taking over, the winemaking for Kanzler. And thinking about that time, you were, Kanzler was doing about 200 cases, and you ramped them up to
2014, full time.
Full time, yeah.
So it started out as part time. You took over
Right.
the 2010, 2011?
Yeah, I kind of inherited the 2010 vintage. It was super small vintage. I think it was either 10 or 12 barrels of wine total. So somewhere in that 200 to 250 case range. Short vintage. They had intended to make more, and like production was way higher in 8 and 9 than it was in 10. But yeah, I inherited kind of a dozen barrels, and then in 2011 forward was doing it graped glass, but I didn't get to quit my day job, so to speak, until just ahead of the 2014 vintage. And that was kind of an inflection point for Kanzler. Through, I guess, 11 and 12 and 13, we kind of built case production back up to around 1,000 cases. And that's sort of like, I found myself working really hard. I was the associate winemaker for another much bigger company. Kanzler was getting, a little bit bigger, and right there around 1,000, 1,200 cases, it was sort of like, we need to shrink this down and kind of keep it as a side hustle for everybody, or we need to grow, and I need to kind of quit the rest of my jobs and make Kanzler my full-time thing and start creating a real company out of what has essentially been, a fun side project for everybody. And it made a little bit of money, and we got to make some wine and start meeting great people and having a customer base, but it wasn't like a growth-driven, quarterly examined, financially buttoned up sort of entity.
Well, and just to set the scene a little bit, you were, as you mentioned, doing this kind of on the side to your full-time winemaking gig. I was in tech. We were engaged to be married in a few months. His parents sort of wanted to step back into more of a retirement role and presented us with a decision. We were living here at the house, at the big house.
Right.
We hadn't converted it into a, wine club benefit, farm stay, or anything like that. I think, had to make a very big decision pretty quickly. And we decided that we wanted to put all our chips in the middle, and I quit my day job. Alex quit his day job and really started focusing on the growth of Kanzler.
You hung on for a while. We had to work in tech long enough to like help pay for our wedding and our honeymoon.
Well, I mean, yeah. No, that makes sense. I mean, plus Apple's a fun place to work at.
We didn't claw her into the wine industry until 2016.
Yeah. No, that is awesome. One of the story behind the Walker Station vineyard is pretty spectacular, and I opened up actually the 2020 Walker Chardonnay.
Nice.
And,
we brought some of that as well.
Yeah, we did.
Oh, nice.
For the email.
Yeah.
Our glasses.
Yeah. No, so I mean, it seemed like from my research, that is a pretty small little vineyard, and it held a very special, place, in everyone's heart. And then when Harry Walker approached you about getting fruit from it, you just you had to jump all over it.
Yeah, totally. I mean,
so just to give a little bit of background on that, we have 3 main vineyards within our portfolio. So the estate vineyard that is behind AJ here, and we have the Walker Station, which is this Chardonnay that we're drinking right now, and another vineyard called Mayfi. We vineyard designate all 3 of those, and then we blend them together to make our Russian River Valley Pinot Noir. So those are our 4 Pinot Noirs within our portfolio. And if you look on the back of any of our Russian River Valley, you'll see that we always provide the breakdown of the percentages of each one of those vineyards that we put into our blend. So what we're talking about right now is this Walker Station vineyard that we leased from Harry Walker and have been for 7 years now. This will be our 8th year coming up. And it's a teeny tiny site. It's 2 acres of Pinot Noir and 1 single acre of Chardonnay.
Yeah, and so as we're discussing, not to confuse people, so yeah, we all have Chardonnay in our glass, and Bree was talking about the blend in the Pinot Noir. So yeah, the site is about 2/3 Pinot Noir, and then we do 1 wine out of just under 1 acre of Chardonnay. So it's a really, it's actually one of the more challenging wines to make, because it's not like, oh, I picked this block too early, well, let's hedge a little bit later with some of our other blocks. It's like, no, you get 1 pick call, you get 1 press load, you get 1 set of barrels. Like, it's one of the pick calls that I stress about the most, actually, because like if you don't get it where you want it, you're fighting an uphill battle to sort of craft the wine that you want.
How did you meet Harry, though?
So
the first time.
I knew Harry because Catherine and I used to do a volunteer group back in high school. So Harry's
who Catherine is.
Catherine is Harry's daughter, who's 2 years older than me. Went to a different high school, but we were in a youth group together, in high school. So I'd known the family. I'd been over to the Walker's house when I was a kid. And then coincidentally, my boss at the previous winery I was working for, called VML, was close to the Walker family. And so that was just oh, you know the Walkers? I know the Walkers from back in the day. Coincidence. Harry and his wife Karen used to babysit my boss's kid, that kind of thing. And they were making their own Walker Station wine at the time. And when they decided to wind that up and no longer make wine, but just sell the fruit, they first started selling it to my boss. And I was like, you got to let me in on that. And so then they made, she was only taking the Chardonnay. And I was like, oh, Harry's selling fruit. Is there any Chard available? No. Okay. Well, what about the Pinot? And so we bought some Pinot from Harry for a year.
To blend into the Russian River Valley.
And my boss was getting the Chardonnay. And then Harry said, do you want to just lease the vineyard? And
directly to Alex.
Yeah. And I said, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
So I had to keep selling the Chardonnay to my boss for another year or two. But then starting in 2015, we were leasing the entire vineyard. And then whenever those contracts lapsed, we were able to just keep all the fruit for ourselves. And so that's been awesome. We're a small label. We only grow 15 acres at the estate and still sell some of that fruit to clients. So we weren't in a position to go out and double production and take on another, dozen acres or anything. But the Walker Station site being 3 acres, giving us an acre of Chardonnay, which we did not have anywhere in our portfolio. We were making a Chard just with purchased fruit, but getting the Walker fruit, it spoke more to kind of our brand pillars of, being farmers first, controlling everything from grape to glass, working primarily with estate fruit. And it was the right size for us to kind of launch and keep up that SKU. We make about 200 cases a year is what that acre gives us.
And Harry and Karen still live on that property. And then we do all the farming for that land. The sweetest couple ever. They're, I think, in their mid 80s now. Something like that.
Harry still mows the vineyard for me, though, almost every week. He gets out there on the tractor and mows it, which is actually super helpful for me. He still enjoys getting on the tractor a couple times a year.
Yeah, I forget when they came over here for the first time to sign that fruit contract. because they brought a bottle of Perrier Jouet, which is one of Harry's favorite, and I had just had LASIK. And so I had these big goggles on because I just had LASIK surgery, and Alex had written them and said, hey, my wife had LASIK surgery today, so yeah, come on over to the vineyard, we'll sign the fruit contract, but just be aware that like I may have to go upstairs and just check on her every so often. And I remember they give you like a lot of Valium before you have LASIK, and I was in bed, Valium up the wazoo, and Alex came upstairs and said, hey, Harry and Karen are downstairs, we're signing the fruit contract, do you want a glass of champagne? And I said, yes, but I only drink champagne with peanut butter and jelly. Next thing I know, Alex was taking a little break from signing the contract to make me a peanut butter and jelly and bring me a glass of champagne.
Oh, that was very nice.
Yeah.
It's funny the things that you stick out in your head.
So do you want to geek out a little bit on this wine?
Totally, yeah. I mean, specific questions or just...
Well, I mean,
rundown?
You can just do the rundown. I mean, I've had a lot of Oregon Chardonnays, and I'm thoroughly enjoying this Chardonnay. It's one of the things I'm curious about is, and I don't know, I suck at describing many things, but on the mid palate, it just kind of grabs you a little bit, and at first it's almost, to me, it's like, oh, has more stainless, but it doesn't have more stainless. I'm trying to figure out kind of what that is. What am I getting?
I'm really excited that you mentioned that because we do a little tasting experience here at the house when it's not rented out, and I'll host people for just kind of pop by tastings. We'll start under the pergola, take them into the vineyard, come into the house to really focus in on some more of the wines. And we're known for our Pinot Noir historically, but our Chardonnay, Alex has taken this, I'm going to toot his horn because I know he won't. He has taken this 1 acre and really honed in on it stylistically. And it's such a beautiful wine. And I get folks who are coming out to taste our Pinot Noir and I don't drink Chardonnay. Oh, this Chardonnay is different and not what I expected.
Right.
So with that being said, similar to what you're saying, it does have a bit of a different flavor profile, and I'll let Alex sort of get into the nitty gritty of that and how he designs this wine.
Yes, I was fortunate that, let's see. So we started working with Harry in 2014. We leased the vineyard in 2015. He had been making his own label for a while and also selling some of the fruit previous to that. So I was able to taste some of the wines that came off the vineyard, and like just, you can look at a map and look at the neighbors and know that it's got great potential. And then you can look at how it was farmed and the rootstock and clonal material in there and have a really good feeling about it. But then tasting some of the wines was really like, okay, like I think there's really a direction that we can go here. And the thing that really, some of the characteristics about the site that really appealed to me were it's got immense, I would say, natural acidity to it. And it's got a really slow ripening curve. Which it's in, I'd say, a medium to warm part of Russian River Valley. It's still in Green Valley, so it's still south of River Road. It's still in kind of the southwest pocket of Russian River Valley with the most access to the coast. But it's kind of at the northern part of Green Valley, in a bit of a banana belt where it does get a little bit warm up there. But there's something about this soil, rootstock, and clone variation where this block really likes to go to like 21.5 bricks and then just kind of sit there.
Oh, wow.
Which is really cool because it allows us to craft a wine that is a little bit more of kind of the style of white wine we like to drink. We like it to be a little bit more acid driven. And we like it to be, as far as like a flavor spectrum for Chardonnay, a little bit more in the mineral and citrus range. Not so much, and some stone fruits, but not super ripe. But if you can, like my Chardonnay, like fruit spectrum is kind of like if citrus is on the one end and the stone fruits are in the middle, and then you start creeping into a pear, and then Chardonnay can go tropical, like kind of pineapple-y, as it gets riper and riper. And we like to be kind of to the left hand of that spectrum. We like to be more in the citrus and minerality side of things. And I thought that this vineyard could really give us that, and it has. So we pick it at a super moderate bricks, even though it gets good hang time because it likes to just kind of park it there. And that allows the pH to come up a little bit as well. Because this wine, again, like we're bottling this wine with no acid additions, like right around 3.2 pH and a TA of around 6.5. So it's got this big acidic backbone to it. So it's kind of naturally giving us what we want. But then being Chardonnay and being, a super premium Chardonnay, the wine deserves oak. We love white Burgundy like a lot of people do. White Burgundy is made with a huge percentage of new oak in particular. So we don't give it that aggressive of a treatment. But the path that I kind of honed in on that's worked really well for this wine is we do it all in 500-liter puncheons instead of a traditional 228-liter barrique.
So twice the size of a standard barrel.
Yeah, and we typically do about 50% new. So at this case production, it's usually about 4 puncheons and then change. So change can end up in a barrique or just in a set of kegs or something like that. But usually 4 puncheons. And I try to use 2 brand new ones and then 2 used ones. And so 50% new oak kind of seems like a lot. And depending on, your oak sourcing and how the wine absorbs it can be a lot. But this wine can handle it. And then also because the large format barrels, it's a little bit different of an impact than you would get from a barrique. There's a decrease in the surface area that the wine sees compared to the volume in the barrel. So I always consider large format barrels to just have a lighter touch. They're also more oxidative. So the wine ages at a little bit of a slower rate in the barrel. And again, we like white Burgundy. We tend to like our whites a little bit more reductive. Sorry, I think I said oxidative before. Puncheon is more of a reductive aging vessel. And so that reductive character keeps things with a lot of tension, a lot of zippiness, a little bit more mineral driven of a character to it. And so that's what we've done with this.
And you can taste it on the wine. I mean, the oak doesn't stick out like a sore thumb. It's really softly integrated, which is great. And I get a lot of people who, they're constantly like, really? This went through full malolactic fermentation? How is that possible? I'm not getting any of that, like, really intense, marshmallowy vanilla,
no vanilla, no marshmallow, no coconut, no butter, no cream. We want to use the oak and the malolactic to build texture, to build some weight into the wine and some viscosity, because this wine at our alcohol level, which is kind of always below 14%, and the pH, like without the oak and the ML, I think this would just be like a laser beam across your palate. Like it'd just be really kind of tingy. So we want to keep the natural acidity in it for balance and also for age worthiness, but it gives you the opportunity to layer in the oak and to use full malolactic with almost no stirring. We'll stir these barrels, a handful of times, but there's folks out there that are stirring barrels twice a week to really incorporate that lees and really build a lot of texture into the wines. And again, it's Chardonnay, it's barrel fermented full malolactic Chardonnay, so it's gonna have texture and depth. But that's not what's driving this wine at all. It's more of an accent character.
Well, and to your point, AJ, just through the mid palate, you get that creaminess without that butteriness, which, to Alex's point, is really...
Creamy texture, not creamy flavor.
I heard an interesting thing, like somebody was equating it, if you're trying to explain sort of a textural aspect to your wine, equating it to like fat-free milk, 1%, 2% whole milk, heavy cream. And like, where does it fall texturally? And I would say for this wine, it's I would say like a good 2% texturally.
That's a fun analogy. Yeah 2%, maybe whole milk in a big area. You don't want to get in the half and half or heavy cream.
I would say consistently, 2% though, texturally.
Yeah. No, that is awesome. It's, and it's been fun to... I opened this about 3 hours ago, and just to watch it evolve, I'm very curious to see it even evolve even more. Just it's been a fun pleasure to just enjoy these last 3 hours.
We should send you a 2017. I'm really enjoying our 17 Walker Station Chardonnay. It went through this weird, awkward teenager stage a couple years ago, and now it's come back, and it's my favorite wine right now.
Wow. That
So
sounds
this
amazing.
wine holds its integrity for sure, while also being super, super approachable upon release. And we release this wine every year in the spring.
Okay, very nice. So one of the other vineyards that I noticed that you talk about, and I saw the picture on your website, and it just blew me away. I mean, there's pictures of the vineyards and there's fog coming in, and, it just looks like it's on the edge of a cliff. I mean, it's absolutely fascinating to see.
The driveway is awful.
Especially when you got like 4 tons of fruit hanging off a trailer on the butt of your too small pickup.
Or like my old manual Subaru.
Oh, that would be awful. That would be awful. What was one of the reasons why you wanted to source fruit? I'm going to probably mispronounce this. The Méfis?
Méfis.
Méfis. Yeah. Okay.
It's French for my daughters, and David Kanzler, the owner of this vineyard, has 4 daughters.
Okay.
So he named it appropriately.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah. So really exceptional site, as you can tell, it's dramatic just from that photo. It's dramatic being up there. It's very, very close to Kanzler Estate. It's only, I'd say 2 to 3 miles up the road, squarely within the Sebastopol Hills neighborhood is what we call them here in Russian River Valley. So we were looking to expand the program. This was in 2014 also, similar sort of time frame as us beginning to work more with the walkers. But we wanted more fruit with kind of the neighborhood signature on it. We still sell fruit off the estate, and that's good marketing for us. When other wineries are putting our name on the bottle, it helps us with market penetration. It helps that there's more Kanzler SKUs out in the market. There's more ways for people to find us. And so we wanted to grow with some purchased fruit as opposed to taking fruit away from the clients. We felt that was a good use of the fruit as well.
I think it's also a good opportunity for us to sort of diversify our portfolio. The estate fruit, we make the estate reserve, which is 100% from the estate. And then making that Russian River, it's really important to us that all 4 of our Pinots taste very different. And so making sure that our estate reserve is a good representation of our vineyard site here, but then making a vastly different wine that really represents the appellation as a whole, being that of Russian River Valley, and drawing from not only the estate, but also Walker and Méfis.
Yeah, it's important that the Russian River blend is not the JV estate. It should kind of be its own wine with its own signature and thumbprint. So bringing in another fruit source was... we weren't even sure that the Méfis was going to be a vineyard designate, but we knew that it would be a great blending component in the Russian River. And that's what we did. So for the first 2 years of working with Méfis, it was all blended into the Russian River. And then after gaining some familiarity in the vineyard, tasting the lots individually, doing some experiments as far as, pick timing, whole cluster inclusion, which cooperages to use with it. By that 3rd year, it was like, this is a standalone wine. This is a different animal, and something that we really want to highlight. And we've been making it as a vineyard designate ever since 2016. So the site, though, being so close to Kanzler, I'd say the principal difference is Kanzler Estate, I consider a warm site in a cool area. We're kind of at the bottom third of the hill. Kanzler Estate's at the bottom third of the hill. It's purely east facing. We got this kind of little sun bowl in here. We're protected from the southern winds. It's a warmer vineyard in an overall cool area. Mm-hmm. Méfis is a cool vineyard in a cool area. It crowns the top of that hill. It's directly in the path of all the breezes that come off the ocean. It's very low yielding. It creates really, really thick skins. Like the juice that comes off of this vineyard, like I don't use it. We make a rosé Saunier. I can't even use any of the Méfis juice in the Saunier.
We can't bleed any of the juice.
It's too dark. Like I want my Saunier to be really light colored and like provincial style, and the Méfis juice off the vine is like it's already too dark without any skin contact in the wine.
Oh wow!
So it makes this very like phenolic, chewy, dense, spicy kind of wine. Which is really, really neat, again, for a blending component and as a standalone wine. I'm writing tasting notes on this wine, and I'm like, why am I writing Syrah tasting notes? I'm writing like white pepper, lilac,
briny,
mushroom, green olive. There's a meaty component to it. Like I'm writing Syrah notes, and then you taste it, and it's Pinot Noir. Right, like it doesn't have the tannin load that a Syrah has. It's not like chewy or inky. The Alk is super moderate on it. Well, Alk can be moderate on Syrah also, depending on where you're growing it. But yeah, some of the aromatics are really like in that realm of more like a cool climate Syrah, which is really cool. It's definitely Pinot Noir through and through. But yeah, just in that photo, you can tell, the exposure that it has. And, in Russian River Valley, the weather, the ocean is the main influencer, right? And all of Russian River Valley is only within a couple dozen miles of the coast. But there are some portions of Russian River Valley that are 7 or 8 miles or even less from the coast. And then there's some that are quite a bit further. But actually, the weather doesn't move west to east because we're protected by mountains. The weather moves south to north. And the southern entrance, for lack of a better word, to Russian River Valley is the Petaluma Gap. Petaluma Gap is our Van Duzer corridor, right? It's the break in the mountains where the weather can come in. And Petaluma Gap is its own AVA right now. So, that's the gap where the fog and the wind can come from. And so it comes in, and that's the south of us, and then it moves south to north. So if you're driving up the 101 corridor and you're in Petaluma on a summer day at 11 a.m., it could be 64 degrees at Petaluma at 11 on a Sunday. And then you drive another 30 minutes up to Healdsburg and it's 20 degrees warmer. And it's just about that access to the coast. And you're still basically in the Russian River Valley that entire time. And there's this immense climatic difference just from south to north. And so again, Mayfi is on like the southern, like Mayfi is, I don't know, a stone's throw, less than a half a mile from that border of Russian River Valley to Petaluma Gap.
So just walloped by that coastal wind.
Yeah. And it's really at the edge. Like if you look at an aerial, there used to be this great site called Every Vine that was kind of like vineyards on top of a Google map, which I used to use all the time. But the whole Sebastopol Hills neighborhood and a site like this in particular, like if you go north or east of Sebastopol, it's great forever. You're the whole rest of Russian River Valley, Dry Creek Valley, Alexander Valley, Knights
vineyards,
Valley, North Napa, all the way up into Lake County, all that. It's just vineyards forever. If you go south or west of Sebastopol, you got, a couple miles of grazeland and the ocean. Like that's it. So there is not too much to the south and west of us. It just gets too cold and too dry too quickly for, and I tip my hat to them. There's some people really pushing the boundaries of, coastal access, and, they're planting vineyards within sight of the ocean. And in the right year, that's great, but that is some high risk, high reward viticulture out there. And I tip my cap to people. And I'll buy your fruit in a good year. I know that I'd want to own one of those vineyards. It's a little spooky.
It is a little spooky. And just kind of diving in a little bit into the harvest of 2022. For Oregon, I mean, it was a crazy vintage for us. In April, we had frost and we had frost, and then we had snow in April, and we were already starting to see a little bit of bud break, and so all the first leaves were a lot of them were damaged, and people were saying, hey, we're going to get like 50% crop loss. But the summer turned it out to be pretty nice. We had a super extended summer, and so normally we start picking mid-September, maybe late September, but people started picking like mid-October this year, and it was just kind of crazy how it kind of took forever for everything to come off, but the second and third blooms actually produced crazy amounts of fruits, and there was large clusters, and I think some people were getting 5 to 7 tons an acre, and it was huge.
That's awesome.
It is awesome.
Frost like that, everybody's like practically wants to throw in the towel in April, and you got to remotivate yourself to see through those crops. So that's really cool that they had that success.
Yeah. So I was just kind of curious, what did harvest look like for you all?
Well, I'm going to set the scene again here.
Okay.
So in March, leading up to...
I don't know where she's going with this.
Leading up to that. Okay, let me just tell you. So now that we welcome guests to this house, we live about 15 to 20 minutes away. but Alex still manages all of our frost. So here in the vineyard, we have sort of two lines of defense for frost protection in the vineyard. The first line of defense, we have two fans down at the bottom of the property that we can turn on that will sort of throw that, cold air up in and allow the warm air to cycle through, right? We've got that line of defense, which is really great for us because they turn on automatically when it gets to a certain temperature, and they run to an app on Alex's phone. So getting up in the middle of the night and not having to leave bed to make sure that, frost protection is being handled is great. But if you get below a certain temperature, those fans are no longer the end all be all with protection. So we have sprinkler systems that run parallel with the vines there. So not the rainbirds, but the ones that run across the vine. So Alex has to ride the ATV down to the well at 3 a.m. in the morning if it gets too cold and turn it on manually, and then go through, make sure none of the tiny little sprinkler heads are frosted over, because obviously if 1, 2, 3 of those are busted, you're going to lose a few vines, right? But we really want to protect those buds from freezing. So Alex is doing that manually, which was a little easier when we were living here on site, roll out of bed, hop on the ATV, but now he's getting out of bed and driving 15 to 20 minutes in the middle of the night. On top of that, in 2022, we had a 6-month-old at home.
Good times.
So 2022 and the big frost year was not fun, but...
Well, don't make me too much of a hero. Morgan lives here on property, and her boyfriend, Zach, who's our assistant winemaker, lives here well. So I have to take responsibility for the system getting started, but at least when I feel like everything's working as optimally as it can, I can sometimes go back to bed and Zach can go turn off the system, after the sun comes up, which is helpful. It's really nice.
Yeah, no, that helps.
Yeah, to kind of summarize the 2022 vintage, warm, dry winter in California. It was a drought year, which was disappointing because we had this epic December. I swear that I read December 2021 was one of the 3 snowiest winters in Tahoe ever. It just howled in December 2021. Ton of rain here, ton of snow up in the mountains, and then done. And it we were putting up goose eggs precipitation wise in I think January and February. And then we got a little bit later in the winter, but not nearly enough to make up for that deficit. So overall, a warmer, drier winter, early bud break in a lot of sites. We work really, really hard at Kanzler to delay bud break as much as possible because we're in that frost zone. So we prune as late as possible. We tie as late as possible. There's been years where we're pushing buds and still tying the canes down to the trellis because we're just trying to hold back bud break as long as possible because, the earlier in the season is, the more likely you are to experience frost. So we definitely had some borderline frost nights. We definitely got hit we have a swale kind of in the bottom third of the vineyard, in the middle of it, just the lowest point in the entire vineyard. And then the bottom of the vineyard is actually a small ravine and a creek bottom. And anybody who's, dealt with frost or sort of understands that, cold air on a cold night flows like water, so it will just go to the lowest point and then start backing up. So that picture that you got there still, AJ, may feed that vineyard up on the crown of the hill, up in the inversion layer on steeper slopes. It almost, I should knock wood right now, never feeds up there in April. There's too much air movement at that elevation, and there's too much space, literally space, for cold air to just slop off that hill and move on its way. At Kanzler, at the bottom of the hill, we collect all that cold air and it starts backing up into the vineyard. So that's why we delay bud break as much as possible, and we deploy the methods that Breauna was describing. So warm, dry winter, earlier bud break. We, kept the brakes on until early April, like normal. That frost event that you guys had in Oregon, I remember it being cold here, but it wasn't nearly as devastating here as it was up there. It was, it was frost fighting, but nothing catastrophic. And then a pretty normal summer, pretty normal fruit set, except for the areas that got frosted. I think overall we were within about the collective District 3, Sonoma, Napa County, within 10% of, a normal 10-year average of harvest. But our big challenge, kind of two of them, was incredible heat around Labor Day, which we've had a couple Labor Day heat waves over the last 5 to 10 years. This was probably the worst one overall. Just like way over 100 degrees for like close to a week. And the forecasters seem to always like, oh, it's going to be 100 for 2 or 3 days. And you're like, okay, that's far from ideal, but I can deal with that. But then when it's over 105 for 6 days, then you're really getting your butt kicked. We kind of pride ourselves on only irrigating as necessary here. We're on no regular irrigation program. We don't irrigate in the spring. We don't irrigate in the summer. But for events like that, I'm happy that the vineyard does have drip. And, post veraison in the fall, in the face of heat, we can turn on the water. And we irrigated basically as much as we could this year. We just tried to pour water on those vines.
Right before that heat wave and during.
Before and during, yeah. Just try to keep things as hydrated as possible, keep the vines as healthy as possible, keep the clusters with as much integrity as possible. And I'm glad that we did, because we rode out that heat wave as well as anybody, I think. We picked some fruit before the heat. Some blocks were not even ready, and we're lucky in the sense that some of those early season heat waves in August and even around Labor Day, like there's a lot of vineyards in Russian River that are like, man, I'm at like 22 bricks right now and I don't want to pick it, but like if I don't pick it and this heat hits, I'm going to go from 22 to 27 in a week. Yeah. We're lucky that like in early August, it's a lot like, oh, we're not even done with veraison yet. So like, we're not going to pick it. I'm not happy about the heat, but I guess I'm happy that I don't have to make that call.
Right. I don't blame you.
Gonna have to ride it out. So we did that, and then we got on the other side of it and stuff got totally moderate, and we're like, cool, like that was the harvest drama. We're done now. We did really, really well. Fruit looks good.
We thought the drama was over.
Bricks are coming down. Vines have good integrity. Like we did it. And then we got like 8 or 9 days of that, and they're like, oh, there's like 2 inches of rain on the forecast. Like, cool. So we did another like kind of massive pick and another big like stress fest of a pick call.
But the fruit, he's going to be modest here. The fruit that came off the vine in between the heat and rain sandwich was gorgeous.
Excellent, yeah. And I was happy with the stuff that we pulled off right before the heat too. I do not like picking during a heat wave. I really think you got to pick your poison. You got to commit to getting it off before, or you got to commit to seeing the weather on the other end, letting your vineyard work through that water if you're able to give it, and kind of let things come back into balance. So yeah, we tried to split the difference there. And we even hung some fruit out through the rain, which is something I think some Oregon winemakers are more familiar with. Like if you picked every berry before some rain came in, then the wines wouldn't be good every year. So you got to learn how to manage those obstacles. But yeah, that was our big drama, was this massive heat wave and like at 8 to 10 day break. And I think it was 10 days after that we got a bunch of rain, and that was kind of it for the vintage. It was early though, so we had everything off the vine. Do we have everything picked before October? This might be the first year we picked everything in September.
Yeah.
We're usually picking in October too, and I think we had everything off the vine in September.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, thank you for that. I always like to hear different perspectives in different places and kind of what all was happening.
Yeah, at least it doesn't hail like it does in Europe.
Oh. That would be heart wrenching.
Weird, who knows? We may have to face it.
Yes, I'm sure that we will. You talked about Morgan a little bit. She was with you at IPNC, so she's your cousin. She lived in North Carolina and graduated UNC at Charlotte. And in 2019, she did it sounded like she did a road trip, on harvest out in California. But like, how did you convince her to even come out? I mean,
I love this.
That's like two totally different.
She was just up.
She came to live with us. She lived with us.
Yeah.
We put her. This was before we had our son, and we put her up in a room in our house, and she had a big hospitality background just in the restaurant industry while she was going to school. And so she had an interest in wine and spirits, and had, there's this great photo of her and Alex at his sister's wedding here on the property. So like she was very familiar with the property and like always interested in kind of what Alex was doing. But then when she moved out here, she got an internship as a harvest intern.
Yeah. I mean, she was, I think, just interested in coming out here and coming west. And as Bree mentioned, she had this strong hospitality background already, and also some sales, some event planning, just kind of that end of things. And I think she was interested in pursuing that, but also wanted to get back to basics, be like, if I'm going to work in this realm, like I want to understand where my product comes from. So like I want to do a harvest at least and kind of see where that takes me. And so
she's probably around here somewhere.
Yeah, she is.
I'll go grab her.
You should. So she did an internship in 19 at Paul Hobbs. Really enjoyed the work. Was living with us. Enjoyed all of her colleagues. Got along pretty well with one of the cellar guys there. His name's Zach. He's still with us. So she did that internship and then was working in tasting rooms and kind of figuring out what was next after the internship ended. And then she went up to Willamette and worked at Antica Terra that next vintage. So definitely pursuing her career, in the wine industry. And then in early to mid 2020, so 2020 or 2021, must have been 2021. We just needed help at Kanzler. It was like, and we needed kind of a jack of all trades. Like I was like, I could use some help in the cellar. Bree could use some help with sales. We need help around the property, managing the farm stay. And her and Zach were still living up in Oregon after their internships. And so we kind of like put together a little compensation package for them, which included a place to live here at the property, and lured them down here to California.
She's on the phone with our shipping company, so.
And they've been living here and working with us ever since. So it's super fun for my dad to have his niece working with us. Super fun for me to have my cousin working with us. It's like, it totally fits our MO of who we are as a company. We like total, including my parents, there's like 7 of us?
There's 6 of us.
6 of us, and 4 of them are like Kanzlers. Like,
right.
Definitely. We have Elizabeth and Jake and Zach who are not directly Kanzlers, but my mom's trying to adopt them anyway, so to speak. It's
our team's made up of friends
and
family.
Company.
Yeah.
and that's awesome. That's one of the things I really enjoyed reading. It sounded like that your mom and dad split, but still everybody's like one big, huge family, and they all get together.
Thanksgiving all together. Like it's kind of funny because even, after they divorced, they're both remarried, have been for over 10 years, but they're still best friends, and we all do everything together. I was
going to say, like, my mother-in-law, my dad's wife, watches our kid once a week.
No, your stepmom.
My stepmom watches our son once a week. My mom's boyfriend, who said the same boyfriend for 12 years, built a wine storage cellar for us here in the garage. It's all very simpatico.
That's awesome. What, you have a nice foundation already laid for a great legacy for your son. What do you hope for?
He's our
for the future
in 2042, and we can retire and get a vineyard in Italy or something.
No pressure.
No pressure. 0, 0, 0.
We're a one and done family. Our son is going to be our only child, if I'm getting super personal, and we hold him up like Simba over the vineyard. Say everything the light,
pressure.
Everything the light
0
touches will be yours. No, I think we're going to go the opposite route. We're going to push him to be an electrician or something. So maybe he'll want to wind up being a winemaker.
That's
see.
Cool. Are you going to get him like a Volvo station wagon for his 16th birthday?
Actually, I think we have a long-standing bet that self-driving cars will be the norm by the time he's of driving age. I think we bet a burger on that a couple of years ago.
That's our standard. There's a hole-in-the-wall diner here called Mike's Burgers, and that's our standing bet. So I think Alex is hard-pressed to get a self-driving car for our son. But no, I think from a legacy standpoint, a winemaking standpoint, a farming standpoint, Alex and I talk about this a lot. especially during the pandemic when things got really bad, like, are we doing enough? You know, we're two very driven people. Like, we're making wine, we're doing this really fun thing that's a lot of hard work. We wear a lot of hats, like everything, like I've talked about, bottling, frost protection, and then all of, you know, I'm pretty sure people think we just on a Tuesday are walking through the vines with a wine in our hands every day. And that's not what we do. But I think, you know, in the long run, we just want to leave the land better than we found it. And we want to make sure that we're doing our part to not only, you know, grow something, you know, tangible like the vines, but also put something in bottle that people are going to love and gift and share together. And, you know, that's all a bit of the flowery portion of winemaking and wine selling, but it's also one of the most enjoyable things. You know, when things got super bad during the pandemic, we had customers who were ER doctors writing us at 1 a.m. with a photo of, you know, them just opening their first bottle of Kanzler and just being like, thank you. This
it's been a horror show for my last 24-hour shift and the 24-hour shift before that and before that and before that. And like, I came home and opened a bottle of one of your wines. Like, thanks.
Yeah. So
that's so trivial, like so trivial, but you know, it makes us feel good that, you know, you can do some small part to brighten up somebody's day in that sense. And I mean, we just, I think we're proud to be small business owners. We're proud of our little team, and we're proud to, you know, contribute to our community and, you know, try to make this little product and make this little business work. And yeah, for the kid, all jokes aside, like, I think be thrilled if he was interested in this in the long run, but we're not going to like try to steer him into that. I mean, maybe do the reverse psychology thing. Like, you can't work with that. Just forget about it. Go get a job, kid.
If it helps any, I mean, you took the path of like not going on wine and then you came back. I mean, I see it over and over and over again.
Exactly. And I think, we'd love for him to fall into it. We'd love for him to be interested in it, but it's what we love to do right now. We're about to build a little tasting space adjacent to the house here, which we're about to break ground on in a couple months. And that's really going to be
our
generational investment in this business. You know, the vineyard was Alex's parents' big investment, the house, the vineyard, the property. They've been so generous in allowing us to take this to the next level. You know, they're like, make sure we're getting 4 to 8 cases a year and making a little bit of money and have fun, kids. Yes. But for us, in order to expand, we really want to be able to host people here on the estate vineyard for tasting experience, as well as have the house in place so people can actually sleep on the vineyard that their favorite wine is coming from. And so that's our next big endeavor, and that's really where we see the business staying for a really long time, is having everything, you know, here on the estate, and be able to welcome guests here and grow a little bit. So we're at about 2,500 cases right now, which Alex and I are super proud that we've gone from that, you know, 400 number to 2,500 cases in total. And we hope to one day be, you know, keeping more of the estate fruit for ourselves, maybe, you know, leasing another vineyard. Maybe Alex and I are able to plant our own little vineyard close by, but all of it being farmed by ourselves and growing this label to a giant 5,000 cases.
No, we bottled awesome. Last week, AJ, so it was 2,283.8 cases.
Oh my goodness.
His production spreadsheet right now.
No, that's great. How about we dive into a few rapid fire questions?
Sure.
Bring it on.
Okay. Favorite artist to listen to during harvest?
Oh gosh, that's a hard one.
Red Hot Chili Peppers.
It's a good answer. It's so just like
the old stuff.
Mood, like
Tom Petty.
Tom Petty's a good one. I listen to hip hop sometimes. I listen to Outkast. Like Old Outcast or The Roots.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, those are 4 pretty good ones.
Okay. Your favorite indulgent food?
Are oysters indulgent? 'Cause they're not, like,
Of course.
heavy. Okay.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
He crushes oysters. It's embarrassing.
We were just at a really nice wedding, and there was an oyster bar at the reception, and I'm like, there's not enough people here. Like, nobody's going to crowd this bar like Rick Park. And bless them, they bought wine from us, so they were drinking our 2018 vintage Chardonnay, which is also in a really nice place. And I drank like 2.5 glasses of our own wine and put down well over a dozen oysters in that part of the reception.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So we gave them a really nice wedding gift because I'm pretty sure he ate $1,000 in oysters.
If you could choose a superpower, what would it be?
Superpower.
Fly?
Okay. Nothing like that's going to contribute to your winemaking abilities. You want to fly?
I could consult wine making like anywhere in the world if I could fly. We could make wine in France in the morning and California in the evening.
There you go.
Good answer. Good answer.
So I have a personal rapid fire question that I've been dying to know. So, Alex, your dad worked at Microsoft. Bree, you worked at Apple. So, is this a Microsoft or an Apple household?
Really good question.
That's a great question. Well, fun fact. So Alex went the winemaking route from family history, and his older sister is actually a director at Microsoft now.
Oh.
And so Stephen had, one of his kids go one of his routes and the other go the other route. So we're a divided house. All of my products are Apple. However, we've got like...
It's somewhat hybrid. In our household, it's an Apple house. And I never, to your point exactly, I came from this like Microsoft family. I didn't own a single Apple product until like Bree and I got engaged. And then I got my first iPhone and I was like, this thing's awesome. And then I got a MacBook after that. And we're actually talking on, I got my first new computer in 8 years as a MacBook Pro. So love that. But
Very
even our
nice.
company, like everybody uses a Mac except for Jake.
Yeah. So we're a little bit of a divided household, but it started out super divided. Like,
So most of our hardware is Mac, but we use like Microsoft Office Suite. Like we use SharePoint and Teams and all the applications and all that stuff.
Melissa's household is a Microsoft household.
Yeah, except the Windows Phone is not a thing anymore, so they're all on Androids.
So no dedicated answer to that rapid fire question. It's a house.
Oh no, it's fine. It's fine. I was just super curious.
Yeah.
All right. That is all the questions that I have. Is there anything else that you'd like to mention?
I don't think so. I think, if anybody's watching this and interested in coming out to see us here in Sebastopol, California, I'd love to host you out on the vineyards. So, my cell phone number is all over our website. My Breauna at KanzlerVineyards.com is all over the website. We'll have a few splashes of wine. We'll walk the vineyard. If you're interested in staying out here, we also offer that. And if you're interested in acquiring our wine, we're allocation only. So we sell our wine in the spring and in the fall. Our next release will be in March of 2023. However, if you do hit the acquire button on our Kanzler.com website and sign up for our mailing list, we do offer a one-time welcome allocation if you are just dying to try some Kanzler wines. So please come find us at Kanzler.com. We'd love to see you sign up for our mailing list, and eventually you'll see information on our very full wine club right now. I'm hoping to open up some wine club spots this coming spring. Our wine club has a really intense following. I keep thinking the other shoe's gonna drop and we're gonna see attrition, but nobody drops my wine club. So
Bree's too popular.
A good problem to have. No, it has nothing to do with my popularity.
It's got a lot to do with her
Everything
popularity.
to do with the wine. Everything to do with the wine. But It's a case in the spring and a case in the fall, which is a large commitment, but we're really, really proud of this wine club. And we offer some really fun benefits like, 30% off the nightly rate of the house. And we're building out the tasting room, which is going to have a wine club VIP lounge. And there's some really cool stuff on the docket. So check us out.
If we don't see you soon, just stay tuned. And if you're, this tasting room project has been a long and slow journey, and we're finally breaking ground on it and are going to have it open towards the end of next year. And that's like, as we mentioned before, like that's our generational investment, and that's the catalyst to which we can grow and meet a lot more people and spend time with a lot more people. And so right now, the farm stay is limited, and the sort of under the table, casual tastings that we can offer are super limited. But once we do that, we promise we're going to keep all the good vibes and who we are as a winery, but we'll get to do it in a little bit more of a formal and welcoming setting, and get to see a few more people. We're going to really blow it up at 10 people per day. That's what our use permit says we can do, is 10 people per
perfect.
I know, you hear tasting room and you think of like the limos and like,
it's not going to do that.
It's going to be a little by appointment. We kind of call it European in style. Like, you're coming out to our family house, you're going to be doing your tasting with me, like married to the winemaker.
But those are the best. It's the more and more people that I run into, they want the smaller feel. They don't want to go to places where all the limos are going and everything. They want the peace and quiet and tranquility.
We appreciate the folks who do both. I mean, we work with some concierges around here, and people will go to a bigger, glitzier, curated winery where the owners are, 4 tiers above, 5 tiers above who you're going to taste with. And not to knock any of those places, a lot of them do just a gorgeous job. And then those same folks will come out and see us. And
it's actually really fun when they do both of those types of experiences in one day. Just getting different vantage points of this industry is really cool.
And at the end of the day, like, it's what's in the bottle, right? Like, that's what the true cork dorks really care about.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time today. It's been an absolute pleasure. I can't thank you enough.
Yeah, thanks, AJ. Let's do it again whenever you're ready. Maybe we can, when we open the tasting room, or when you're on a California junket and you want to pop by, we'll do it again and taste some more wines.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Come see us.
Thank you so much. Yes.
All right.
Thank
you.
All
right.
Thank you.